ॐ वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। So I'm very happy to be back here on a very auspicious occasion. We just celebrated Janmashtami, and the message of Sri Krishna that we are going to discuss today is intimately connected with his own life. So I'm very happy that Sri Nath Ji, who has written 3 nice books on the Bhagavad Gita, which is the central message of Sri Krishna's teachings. Bhagavad Gita constitutes the central message, but it is intimately connected with his own life. His life was the best commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. We have many commentaries. Each one of us tries to apply the wonderful message of Sri Krishna to our own life. When we try to apply, we find such a diversity of ideas, thoughts in all the 18 chapters, and we find that this particular idea is applicable to my life, to the situation in which I am in. Once I remember one of the disciples of Swami Vivekananda asked his guru, he said, "You are telling me so many things." Maybe Arjuna had the same problem, that I don't know which one to follow. So there is a chance that when we read the Bhagavad Gita, as Arjuna himself expresses, the 2nd chapter, if we see, he tells him something, and in the 3rd chapter he tells about Karma Yoga and asks him to fight. Then Arjuna asks him, "See, I think your ideas are a bit contradictory," because he was a friend, he was a sakha. They had a very intimate relationship, they were friends, great friends. You see, that's the beauty of Indian tradition. Sri Krishna was a friend to some people considered him as a lover, our beloved, some as Yashoda did, the beautiful Bal Gopala. So that Vatsalya Bhava Yashoda had with Sri Krishna. So he was connected to everyone, the common man, the common, his friends, cowherd friends in Vrindavan and also Mathura. We find he had different relationship with different people. So when Arjuna asks him in the Bhagavad Gita, "Your messages, as you have given them one after another, the 1st chapter, 2nd chapter, we will be discussing all the 18 chapters subsequently, whenever we get an opportunity every month, to find out the gist of each chapter and its relevance to our life." So not all the ideas are relevant to us in our stage of life. Some people may like the 3rd chapter or the 4th chapter, some people may like the Dhyana Yoga, the 6th chapter, some people like the 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga. And then there are other chapters where God can be approached. And as I mentioned in my previous talk on Gita and Vedanta, that Gita Shastra is something very unique. It is not just a Upanishad, which means it has a knowledge portion associated with it, but there is a practical application which is known as yoga. Just as we have pure sciences, and then when we apply those principles of science, we have technology. That is how the principles of science are used as technology, when we understand that they are not mere theories, they are not just principles, but those principles have to be applied in real life situations, then it becomes technology. And if we find applications for each of the principles discovered by these scientists, so-called followers of pure science, or scientists whose main aim in life is to try to discover new things, abstract things, which appear abstract, but there are a lot of applications hidden in them. Only we need to not only discover them, but apply it. So similarly, yoga is compared to Vedanta, or the ideas, as Sri Krishna says at the end of each chapter. We see that it's a Upanishad, but at the same time it is a yoga as well. So each one of the 18 chapters, we call them as yogas. Include Vishada. Maybe a bit surprising why Vishada is a yoga. Can Vishada or depression or some kind of sorrow or misery, can it be a yoga? In fact, that is the beginning of our spiritual life. If there were no sorrow in life, there were no pain in life, then we don't need spirituality in our life. We would be happy with the material things that we have. So it is only when there is pain, when you feel the need to find out solutions to our existential problems. By existential problems, I mean problems which concern our own existence, our security, our worries, our anxieties. Many of these worries and anxieties are unfounded. They would never happen in our life. But you ask, these problems persist. We worry about something which might not happen after all. But still they are there. So what is the cause? And why do we suffer? Is it necessary to suffer? Some people are fatalists, as Arjuna also imagined. If everything is predetermined, then what is my role in life? When we showed him, he said, you just become a nimitta matra, bhavasavya sachin. It occurs. So you just be an instrument. These things are already predetermined by me. The Lord shows him the form, how people will be killed and who all will be killed. So that vision which Sri Krishna shows him, perhaps some people may interpret it as fatalism. If everything God has decided, then what is my role? So these questions are very common when we approach Bhagavad Gita, especially as a text of yoga. Ideas are there. In the second chapter, there are wonderful ideas of the Atman, which is also known as Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga. The basic principles of Vedanta have been beautifully summarized. But everything in the second chapter is not just ideas. The Sthita Prajna Lakshana, which Arjuna asks him, how does a Jnani, how does a person who follows this path of Sankhya or Jnana, how does he walk, how does he talk, how does he live? How do we test that a person is following the principles of the second chapter? So he gives him the lakshanas. So many people ask, if we become Sthita Prajna, then these are the consequences, the actions that we see a Sthita Prajna behaving, treating loss and victory and loss, defeat as the same, heat and cold, all the pair of opposites that we encounter in life, which in Patanjali's yoga known as kleshas. Kleshas is raga, attachment for things that we like. There are many things. Right from childhood, a child is born without likes and dislikes. But slowly, the elders teach him, oh, these are the things you should like, these are the things you... Then the likes and dislikes increase. And as a result, our raga and dvesha, according to Patanjali, they are our fundamental problems. So all the likes and dislikes, attachment towards things that we like, avoiding things that we don't like. The more we have strong likes and strong dislikes, our life becomes more miserable. That is the sum and substance of the Klesha theory in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And since this chapter, the second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, even the sixth chapter, where the principles of yoga are the Raj Yoga as it is known, the yoga of meditation. Why these likes and dislikes are harmful for us? Why should we have equanimity? Equanimity is yoga. That's one wonderful. There are so many gems in the Bhagavad Gita. When we come to the central message of Gita, you cannot say this is a particular message, the central message. But there are many messages which could be considered as the core messages which are useful to entire humanity, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion. Anybody who observes very minutely, introspects, that would be a better word. We normally leave everything to fate. We take things as they come. But we don't think, why do we suffer? We don't ask questions. In fact, Bhagavad Gita is full of questions. Arjuna has these problems, beginning with the first chapter, where he is confused as to what he should be doing. Should he kill? Or yesterday we had a nice retreat where the topic was courage to be. There's a famous drama, Shakespeare's drama, which is known as Hamlet. Hamlet says, to be or not to be. What does he mean? He is confused. He is so much confused that living was very painful. So does that mean we should die? Will death will relieve us of the problem? Many people commit suicide. Their idea is, this life is not worth living. So it's why don't we commit suicide? They think that's the easy solution. But in Hamlet, to be or not to be, should I exist or should I not exist? His problem was, he was afraid that because he doesn't know the consequences, what happens after death. That is an equally important question. A very pertinent question, what happens to a jiva after death? So Patanjali classifies that existential problem, which is known as abhinivesha. He says all our problems, more or less, avidya is there, ignorance is there. We'll come to that later. But if you see the central theme of Gita, these ideas are discussed, starting from Sthita Prajna Lakshana onwards. The same principles. What Sri Krishna has done, it's such a wonderful book that he has synthesized all the traditions. Yoga is a very old tradition based on Kapila Muni. In fact, he says, among all the Munis, I am Kapila. That's another chapter, wonderful chapter. So he is trying to synthesize all the ideas. All of you know it is a part of Mahabharata. Before that, we had so many, the Vedic tradition is much older than that. We have the tradition of yoga, we have the tradition of Sankhya, which forms the basis of yoga. So Sri Krishna, it's a wonderful, all the beads are threaded. All the wonderful ideas of the Upanishads, of the yoga tradition, of all the traditions that were existing, he has combined to form a synthetic philosophy which can be applied here and now. I remember an incident. One of our Swamijis who used to travel all over the world giving talks on Bhagavad Gita, he met the chief of the Indian army, who was still the chief, and he met him in Delhi, and they had invited the Swamiji for a talk. He was very senior, his name was Swami Ranganathanji. He used to travel a lot, trying to spell out the message. So he was asked to speak on the Bhagavad Gita. So this general, the chief of the army staff, had a copy of Bhagavad Gita on his table. And Swamiji was sitting just opposite before the talk. He just saw this book and asked him, "Oh, it's very nice. You keep this book?" Because mostly in the office they will have all the other things related to their work. And being the chief of the army, he would be very busy. So he told something, maybe he thought he will impress the Swamiji. He said, yes, of late, means in his younger days perhaps he was not so much aware, but he was about to retire, few years before retirement. So he said, I keep this book, nowadays I keep this book with me because it gives me a lot of peace. So then he naturally thought Maharaj would be very happy. Somebody is using Bhagavad Gita to get peace. But to the contrary, he said, "Oh, I expected you to tell something else. I expected you to say that this book gives me the courage and strength to do my duty perfectly." As an army general, chief of the Indian army, I would have been more happy if you had said, this book enables me to do my duty, discharge my duty fearlessly, honestly, with integrity, and uphold dharma. That is the real purpose of that is the central theme of Bhagavad Gita. If you want peace of mind, there are other books. Gita is not something which was spoken to Arjuna on a battlefield to give him peace of mind. Then there are other books. Uddhav Gita is there. And if you see, there are other messages of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. For some people he said, okay, you retire to the forest, go to a monastery, or maybe just go and just like Vanaprasthis used to do in those days. You retire from life, but Arjuna was a very active general and on him depended the whole battle. And he was on a battlefield. And after trying everything, Sri Krishna tried very hard to bring peace. But there are certain times when dharma becomes more important. You have to fight for dharma. So Swamiji said, if you had understood the meaning and message of Bhagavad Gita, not just take some chapters and say that it is a book which gives me a lot of peace. Some people don't even open the book. They worship the book. Pothi, they call Bhagavata, and many books are worshipped. On special days, they will bring the book, decorate it so beautifully, do some puja. And if you ask them what is there inside, so we don't know, it's a sacred book. So, Swamiji told him that, you see, I would have been more happy. No doubt this book gives you peace, it is fine. But right now, you are active army general. Say you, through Arjuna, Sri Krishna is giving you a message how to fight the battle. Not only the battle, not only the war, but your own battle of life. So I would have been more happy if you had said that this book inspires me to fight the battle of life. Even fight the war if necessary. If it is necessary, if it is a just war. So Sri Krishna, through his life, showed that his message is for all people of all times. Not just the people of the Mahabharata war or maybe after that. Not of that age alone. His message is eternal. He is the eternal Krishna, whose message is eternal just as his own life. It's an eternal inspiration. Otherwise, why will this book be inspiring thousands and thousands of people? Every time somebody reads, he feels like writing a commentary. Somebody asked one of our Swamijis, you see, Shankaracharya wrote a commentary, after that Ramanuja wrote, and there are so many Acharyas. Every Acharya writes a commentary. That confuses us. But why should it confuse you? Each one has a message. He can interpret Gita in his own way. We have a nice commentary. Based on his life experiences, Mr. Nath has written 3 volumes. He might have referred to other commentaries. But the main point is, what have I gained? If I read the Gita, it should help me. If it helps a general, it should help him to make him better general of the army. It should not help him to become a Muni or something. But if a Muni reads it, if somebody who has renounced the world, like Sri Krishna had other devotees, disciples, the message Sri Krishna gave to Radha and the other gopis was different. It's not the same message he gave to Arjuna, obviously, because their relationship was different. At a different level. The message he gave to Yashoda was different. She did not want to see him when he tried to show. If you see the wonderful life of Sri Krishna as a child, now and then, though she was his foster mother, Devaki of course was his real mother, biological mother, but Yashoda was more than a mother for him. That Vatsalya Bhava, that love she had for Krishna. She just wanted to have a relationship of a mother with a child. So now and then, you see the exploits of Sri Krishna when he was very small. Sometimes he showed his something like Vishwarupa Darshana, which he showed to Arjuna. He used to show many people. Throughout his life, sometimes he showed his divinity. Yashoda would see that. And then suddenly she says, no, he is my child. And I am happy. I am his mother and he is my child. That relationship, she was very happy with that kind of human relationship. So also we see Arjuna many times, he treats Sri Krishna just as a friend. He says, you are my Sakha. Please tell me what is good. I am confused now. You are saying me, first you said you fight, then you say all these big ideas about jnana. So what is definitely good for me? You please tell me, because I trust you as a friend. So this is how everybody has approached Sri Krishna, right from the gopis and then his friends, his boyhood friends, who also considered him to be Sakha. Then we have somebody has seen him in his Vishwarupa Darshan, which he had. Of course, Sanjaya could convey that to Dhritarashtra, though he was blind. But he had that Divya Chakshu was given. So he revealed his cosmic form also. So some people are impressed with that. So the whole thing boils down to what message we get from the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, there is Srimad Bhagavatam also, which discusses where the central theme is there in the Bhagavad also. Sometimes we have to search for the central theme. There are so many things mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Each chapter if you read it as an academic, maybe to do some PhD or maybe to as a philosophy, then there is lot you can do study. You compare the different commentaries. But if you use it as a manual for your day-to-day life, here and now I want a solution to my problems. And that problems I am encountering every day, every minute. And does Gita have a solution for those problems? That is what Arjuna was asking him. He did not ask him, Can you imagine? There is a battlefield, the people are arrayed facing each other, and everybody has blown his shankha. In those days, when you blow the shankha means you are ready for war. So there are so many kings fighting either on the side of Kauravas or Pandavas. So you can imagine it's something like a world war. And he is in the middle of the two armies facing each other, and there was no certainty who will live, who will die in this war. And in the midst, he was not in a mood to think. We don't think philosophy when you are fighting a war. You are just about to fight a war. When people are there with weapons trying to kill you, your philosophy doesn't work there. Though we have a situation where these 18 chapters were delivered, in those days there was more discipline. Even in war they would have certain rules and regulations. They were broken. In Mahabharata, if you see, many times the rules were broken. But more or less they followed that. After the end of each day of the war, there was a rule. After sunset, there would be no fighting. You just go back to your camps, recover, so that you can fight. You can't fight day and night like the wars that take place now. Those days there were rules. But at the same time, definitely, the middle of a battlefield is not a place where you discuss philosophy. It's not the philosophy department where you sit quietly and then go on discussing. So it was an urgent message. That is why when Swami Vivekananda was asked, he said, read Gita as poetry. And you will find one of the chapters or one of the ideas of one of the chapters will strike you. And you will say, this is the message. This is what I want in my life. And you have to work on that. We have to work on that. It's not that every message will be relevant for me. There are many things which may not be relevant for me at my stage of life, in my position, in my profession. It may not be relevant. So we have to find out. There are certain, but still, in spite of the variety of 18 chapters, 18 yogas, we just generally classify yogas into four yogas. That is what Swami Vivekananda did. Each yoga corresponds to one faculty of the mind. There are four yogas: Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Karma Yoga, which are covered in these 18 chapters. But there are 18 yogas. There is a reason for that. These four yogas correspond to our the mental makeup of every human being. Jnana Yoga, we have a capacity. We have four capacities. According to the Western psychology, there are three capacities of the human mind. You go to any text on Western psychology, they say there is a power to think in every child, in every human being. Power to think, there is a power of the mind to feel emotions. Everybody experiences that. Some people may be more more thoughtful. They like to think more. They are dry people. They don't have any emotion. Some people are very emotional. For everything they will start crying or they will start laughing. They are full of emotions. So such people, they are predominantly people who feel. Then there is another third category, power of thinking, power of feeling, power of willing, willpower. Willpower means such people, in life we see such people who don't waste their time in thinking. Somebody joked, they said Japanese people, they are these people with very strong wills. They're very active. If you see Japanese people, they're very hard working. That's why they were so successful. They don't think too much. In fact, we had a brahmachari who came from Japan to join our monastery. It was so difficult to convince him that he has to attend all the classes. We had Brahma Sutras, Vedanta, so many subjects you have to teach. The first thing he asked was, his name was Dhruva Maharaj. We called him Dhruva. He had a Japanese name. So he said, do I have to study all these subjects? I said, yes, why not? No, I'll specialize in one subject. He said, in Japan we don't do like this. We take up one idea and then try to see if it is applicable in my life, practice it, and if it works, then I'll take up another idea. I can't have so many ideas and none of them will work for me, then I'll be a confused person. I have many ideas, but nothing works for me. So they are known as people with Ichha Shakti. They immediately want to implement and see whether the idea works for me. So they are active people. If they get an idea, they will work it out. So they are known as Karma Yogis. You ask, there are so many Karma Yogis. They can be Karma Yogis. They are Karmis actually. They are not Karma Yogis. If you convert it into yoga, then it becomes Karma Yoga. Otherwise, these are hyperactive, you can say, people. They cannot sit. That's why such people, after retirement, they find it very difficult. They have led so much active life. Whole life they are multitasking. Out of 24 hours, even in sleep, they are dreaming about certain projects they have to do tomorrow. They want to associate with this social activity, that activity. You ask them to sit quietly, they can't do it. Because they are people with very strong willpower. So they have to be given work. They have to work. Otherwise, if you tell them, in old age they cannot work because physically they are not fit. But if they don't practice Karma Yoga, they'll find it very difficult. So that's why Krishna said for active people, we have the Karma Yoga. So we'll discuss all these things, what is the essence of all the yogas. And the fourth yoga, it is the Indian yoga, Indian discovery. Thinking, feeling and willpower, that is common in Indian and Western psychology. But Indian psychology discovered a fourth mental power. It is the power to restrain the mind. It's the power of thinking, power of feeling, power of willing. But our yogis, our ancestors found there is a fourth power of the human mind, which is known the power of restraining thoughts. They found when you restrain your thoughts, just as when you restrain a flow of water, a flow is going on, you just stop it with a dam. What do? You convert that flow into potential energy which can run the turbines and generate electricity. So there is power in stopping. People think you can demonstrate power only when you act. People want, some activity, but people don't realize that people who can control their thoughts, that is known as Raj Yoga, the fourth yoga, which is there in the 6th chapter of the Gita. Why do we restrain thoughts? It is such a difficult thing. Arjuna complains to Sri Krishna. He said, you are asking me to stop, but it is so difficult. It is like the mustard seeds which you scatter all over the place and then ask, now you collect all these seeds. It's so difficult. Our thoughts are like that. The worst thing that we do, especially our children, is not training them to develop this restraining power. We train their willpower by making them play sports and be active, go to the gym. The willpower increases, the endurance power increases. We make them run races, marathons. That's fine. The willpower increases. We do all the discipline, tapasya. When we do tapasya, we fast, it's just to increase the willpower. Our mind has this willpower, it has to be developed. It doesn't develop. The endurance capacity has to be developed. So also we have the capacity to think logically, analysis, thinking. So in our education system, modern education, there's a lot of material for developing thinking, logical thinking. We can go to any extent. That is also developed. But as far as feeling is concerned, unless you have some kind of outlet like music, like dance, like some creative activity where you can express your emotions, that has been neglected. Not in all schools, but in most of the schools. Too much of thinking is given to the rational capacity of the human mind. And also in the sports schools, we give a lot of importance to the activity aspect. So Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga becomes more attractive to such people. Bhakti Yoga, unless you have a higher ideal, that emotional attachment to the Lord. There are 5 bhavas, as I told you. Vatsalya bhava, Matri bhava, means considering God to be your father. These bhavas are meant for emotional people. They understand relationships very well. They are very close to their parents or their friends. So different bhavas they can understand. If you say Krishna is your friend, then you know that this is Sakha bhava. So you can get an idea because you have your own friends. Since childhood you have been friendly with many people. So you know what it is to make the Lord himself your friend. He is the best friend. We have that Tvameva Mata Pita Tvameva, all these things, Bandhu, Sakha, everything is you. So there are, in Bhakti Yoga, we use, if a person is very emotional, he is so much attached to his child or maybe mother, father, then you say, why don't you consider God as in one of those relationships? And when you deepen it, because human emotions, when you know how when relationships break, people are shattered because you are placing your feeling on something which is going to vanish. People are not going to live forever. So Bhakti Yoga says, emotions are very good. You should love people, you should love your father, mother, but all these relationships are temporary. They will give you joy for some time, that emotional attachment, but one day they will be snatched away from you. So that's why the Lord gives a warning. He says, Bhakti, you by loving me alone, the eternal Lord alone, you will be free from this particular problem. So we are refining our emotions. Some people will consider the Lord to be their friend. Some will consider him to be the Pita or Mata, father, mother. Any relationship is fine. And people understand. Some people who are very emotional, their emotional capacity is highly developed. They find very easy. You just have to tell them you love, like Shabari's devotion to Rama. She was not a scholar, she did not have the capacity to think, to study Vedanta or to study even any of the scriptures. But all she knew, she was waiting for Rama. Like Hanuman, the feeling one servant has with the master. He is very dedicated. He may not be educated, but he is very, very dedicated to his master. So if Rama is his master, then he does everything to serve Rama. That is the goal of his life. So that is known as Dasya Bhava. So there is an emotion where you are attached to your master, but don't attach it to your boss, who may not be a good master after all. So you have to attach yourself to the supreme master of the world, the Lord of the world. So you are safe because he is the eternal master, the eternal child, the eternal lover. As the gopis, they had this kind of feeling. They even forgot that they had a family. Many of them, when Krishna was just 14 years old, he just had to play the flute and attracted by that divine music. It's the eternal music of the soul. There's nothing physical about it. But these gopis, some of them were married women. They had their own duties, they had their own children. Leaving everything, they used to run. But with all this Leela which took place, the Ras Leela and everything, there is one central characteristic of Sri Krishna. which is very clear in the Bhagavad Gita. Now we come to the central message. There are different messages, Bhakti Yoga as I told you, and then finally I'll just discuss this, the capacity to restrain the thoughts, that is known as Raj Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. What we do is, Patanjali says, what is yoga? Yoga is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The Chitta has many vrittis. It is dissipating all our mental energies. That's why we feel exhausted. A person whose mind is restless, he feels he has done nothing. He is sitting in a place, and at the end of 1 hour he says, I am exhausted. Or you have done nothing, you are just sitting. How can you be exhausted? There is a thing known as mental exhaustion. The thoughts, we don't realize that there is so much of thinking, it exhausts. Don't think it is the working that our active life exhausts us. It may exhaust us, but the more exhaustion is felt when you are not able to control the mind. So our yogis discovered, the spiritual masters discovered that there is a fourth faculty of the mind, which can be used or which can be harnessed only if you can control your mind. So what happens when you control the mind? The same thing happens when you put a dam across the flowing river. You don't allow the flow to dissipate the water. You store every cubic centimeter of water, and then it creates so much of potential energy. In future you can use it whichever way you like. So the yogis said there is another yoga. All you have to teach your children or teach yourself is how to control your minds. And if you control your mind, you will find that you will have plenty of energy which you can harness for your own development, for your own progress, whichever field. So, yoga, there is a verse which says, Yoga Karmashu Kaushalam. So, many people think that it is interpreted in this way, that if you know, Kaushala means skillfully, then every mechanic or every artist or every sportsman should be a yogi. Is it true? Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Karma you are doing with lot of dexterity, you don't make mistakes. You are a very excellent computer operator or a technician, and all your life you have done excellent work. Does it make you a yogi? That is not the case. What he means is, do it in such a way that it does not exhaust you. Now what do you mean by exhaustion? It's not just physical exhaustion. It is this mental exhaustion. If you do this work with anasakti or detachment, now we come to the central point, that is karma yoga. Do it in such a way, the skill that Sri Krishna is speaking of when he says yoga, there are many definitions of yoga which he gives, just like Patanjali says yoga chitta vritti nirodha, stopping the waves of the mind, you generate energy, use it for good purposes, for positive purposes, that is known as yoga, to elevate yourself. Then yoga is also defined as karmasu kaushalam, that is karma yoga. In karma yoga, if you know how to do the work properly, not get attached to the fruits, ma phaleshu kadachana, don't be attached. That doesn't mean you don't work, you work, but don't be upset if the results are not according to your efforts. Sooner or later you will get it, but don't worry about it, because for the simple reason that if you constantly think of the results, then your work will not be skillful or will not be efficient. Say for example, somebody is studying for the exams. I have seen some students, they put some banner in their study room that I should stand first or second, or maybe I should get so much marks, this is my target. And many people are taught like that, you should have a goal. It's fine. But if he keeps on watching that instead of studying hard, will he achieve that goal? That's the idea. Phala is there, but don't think of the phala, that will dissipate your energy. That is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means phala will come to you whether you like it or not. Every cause has a effect. So karma theory is never going to be wrong. Karma theory always works. If you have put in effort, today or tomorrow you will get the benefit. But if you think of the benefit, of the profit that you will make, what karma phala I will get, you will be daydreaming. And the student who ought to channelize his energy in karma, that is reading, he is focusing on the karma phala. So 25 or 30% of his energy is wasted and then he will not get the result. That is what is meant by yoga karma su kaushalam. Do it in such a way. So how to do that karma yoga? The answer is given by Sri Krishna's life. Swami Vivekananda says, Buddha and Krishna, they were the greatest karma yogis the world has ever seen. Why does he say that? Both of them had a quality which is known as anasakti. Mahatma Gandhi wrote a commentary on the Gita, like many people write. So somebody asked him, what is the central theme according to you? So he named the book, his thoughts on Gita. As I told you, everybody reads something, some message as the central message. So he said, Karma Yoga, Gita according to me, my commentary will be named Anasakti Yoga. Asakti means attachment. Anasakti means detachment. So he saw that definitely must have read the life of Sri Krishna, right from childhood till the end. What was the central message? He was not attached to his parents, biological parents. He was born in a jail, all of you know. He stayed with Yashoda, his foster parents. Was he attached to them? They were his friends, very dear friends, including Sudama, his classmate or his classhood friend. He treated all of them with so much love. So was he not attached? He came in touch with all these gopis, the wonderful Vrindavan Leela which we see. So much of love, perhaps they would not have loved any human being. Of course, he was a divine being, but no gopi would have loved anybody else as much as they did Krishna. So you would expect Krishna to reciprocate. But you see, he is not attached. The day he leaves Vrindavan, he never comes back. They suffer in the sense it is not suffering actually. They had this kind of viraha. Viraha means when will Krishna come back, when will Krishna come back. So you see there are some beautiful stories in the Bhagavatam also, where Uddhava, Narada, so many people, they just come to Vrindavan and they ask, how is our Krishna? For them Krishna is still that small boy, 14-year-old boy. He has grown up. He is a king now. Of course, he was not attached to his kingdom. He was a king maker, not a king himself. He never enjoyed his kingdom. Even after destroying Kamsa, his own uncle, he made, Kamsa had imprisoned his father, Ugrasena. So he made him the king. He defeated, he killed Kamsa. He could have easily become the king, but he didn't want. He was not attached. He was there just to uphold dharma. So what he did, he gave the kingdom, just as Rama gave the kingdom to Vibhishana after defeating Ravana. He was not attached. He could have easily become the king himself. Kamsa was a very powerful ruler. It is not so easy to kill him. But you see, he was not attached. So also the gopis. So when he leaves Vrindavan and he never comes, he is so detached. But when he was there, they thought he is the dearest of all dear. But the love they had for Krishna did not diminish, even if he went away, because that was not physical love. It was just a spiritual attachment to the Supreme. So we find when the gopis, whenever they came, see, love, Swami Vivekananda says, you say, I love a person. That love is selfish, because if that person doesn't love you, you feel sad. You want a reciprocal love. Oh, I have done this. Father loves the son, or children says, I love you so much. And if the child does not reciprocate or neglects, then the father feels pain. That is two-sided love. It's a kind of business or trade. I love you, you love me. Whereas Sri Krishna taught these gopis, and that is why they are supposed to be the greatest lovers. What would happen when the people came from Dwaraka or somewhere else? When they came to know that, oh, this person has met Krishna, the first thing they would ask, they will not complain that Krishna has left us and he has betrayed us, he was so close to us. No, nothing. Their only concern was, how is Krishna? Perhaps they thought he never grew up. He was grown up into a big person. But the first thing they would ask, is he okay? Is his health okay? Their love was one-sided. They just wanted Krishna to be happy wherever he is. That is the nature of the divine love. And that love is eternal because it's just one-sided. It doesn't depend on whether the others love you or not. The person whom he loves, you are just concerned about his welfare or her welfare. And these gopis used to ask him, how is he? How is his health? All they wanted to know is that he is fine, he is doing well. That gave them happiness. So they didn't suffer like other people who feel that their love has been betrayed. So that is that kind of detached love, you may say. It's a love when you love the spirit, not the gross thing. That is the central message of Gita. That's not the Prakriti that you should love. Sankhya also says it is the Purusha alone, the pure consciousness alone, that is worthy of love, because that is eternal. It never goes away. There will be changes in Prakriti. Many things will change. We hold on to something, they will be taken away from us. But Purusha, the pure consciousness is with us, it is within everybody, and that never goes. The gopis had understood that. For them, Krishna was that pure consciousness. The external form of Krishna was just something they enjoyed. External form. They wanted to see him, they wanted to be in his company, because his attraction, one of the meanings of Krishna is one who attracts. So he, as Swami Vivekananda said, that many people are detached. They don't have any heart. They don't care if anything happens. So in Karma Yoga, Swami Vivekananda, when explaining the life of Krishna, he says, it's not that you should be detached. You should have the power of attachment, at the same time have the power of detachment at will. Krishna had tremendous attachment towards these gopis, his friends, Yashoda, everybody. But when he left them, he could detach at moment's will. That is Karma Yoga. So Mahatma Gandhi says, I think the whole of Bhagavad Gita conveys to me one thing. Whether it is Karma Yoga, Vishada Yoga, all the yogas from 1st chapter to 18th chapter, they have a central theme, that is detachment, anasakti, or a detachment from the gross, but attachment to the spirit. The attachment to the pure consciousness, which is the real nature of Krishna. So that is why this organization, which is known as ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It's not the Krishna, the form of Krishna that is important, it's the consciousness behind the Krishna, the spirit behind Krishna that is important. Who is that Krishna? Why should he be worshipped? Why should he be our role model, our goal? Because that is the only reality which exists. And he himself says, many places he says from that high level of consciousness that I reside in the hearts of everybody and guide them to their own destinies. But we don't realize that, we don't feel that. that can come only through detachment. So in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is his message, somebody asked him, what is the central theme of Gita? So he said, Gita is very simple. In Bengali, if you want to repeat Gita, you just reverse it. Tagi, ta and gi. Then it becomes tagi, tagi, tagi. Normally the ya is not pronounced, though ya is there. You in Hindi and in other Indian languages we say tyagi. But in Gospel, Thakur says, Sri Ramakrishna says that the essence of Gita can be understood just by reversing the letters. That just gi and ta gi, tyagi. So tyaga was the message. The detached tyaga means it's not that you become a monk or something. That is an external form of tyaga, but that detachment which we can see in the life, and that was his message, the central message of the Gita. That unattachment, if it is practiced, then you become an ideal yogi. That is why he tells at the end of the 18th chapter, after explaining all the different yogas, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, because he knows that every person, not only Arjuna, but all others who will be listening to this immortal message of Gita, they will come with different requirements. Some will be emotional, they will like the 12th chapter, they will be very happy just reading the 12th chapter every day. There are some people who are very fond of Prakriti. For them also there is a chapter where his Vibhuti is described. Not Vishwarupa, but the Vibhuti Yoga, if you see the chapter preceding the Vishwarupa Darshana, where every object, everything that we encounter in life is considered as a manifestation of that Purusha. So we have the idea that the greatest amongst all the objects that we see gives us an idea of the Lord's greatness. It is not a perfect estimate of the Lord. For example, he says, Thavarana Himalaya. All of us, those who belong to the Indian tradition, we know the Himalayas are the grandest mountains in the world. There may be higher peaks elsewhere, but for practical purposes, the Himalayas are supposed to be the king of mountains. So among the stationary objects, Sri Krishna is saying, look at my Vibhuti. So what is the fun in meditating upon the Himalaya? What is the fun in meditating upon the different things which he says? Among all the yagnas, I am the japa yagna. We do yagna, we do havan, we do rituals. But he says, among all the rituals, you may do Ashwamedha yagna, you may do this yagna, that yagna. But the Sreshta yagna is japa yagna. When you do japa, it is a subtle form of every japa that you do, every nama japa that you do. It is an offering to that fire, that subtle fire of the universe. So, Yagnanam Japa Yagnosmi. So he's telling me, among all the yagnas that you do, there are so many yagnas, small, big, long, elaborate. But the best yagna is Japa Yagna. That is how you contribute or make progress. That's the Sreshta. Only the most superior among people will be attracted to this Japa Yagna. That's why Namasmarana, even in the tradition, Vaishnava tradition, in any tradition, even in the Sikh religion, Shabad Kirtan, or the name of the Lord, is given so much importance. That is because Sri Krishna very clearly says that all rituals are fine, but japa, that ahuti you give by doing japa, is the sreshta, is the best among all yagnas. So also many things. He will, in that whole chapter, that is one reason why he explains these things is, we see many great things in life. But do we see the Lord in them? anything that is Sreshta comes from the Lord. Not that others are not part of the Lord, but when you see greatness anywhere, you will find that it becomes easy to imagine the greatness of the Lord. He says, these are all my partial manifestation, but they are my manifestation because they are great. They are the best in that species. Like in trees, we have the idea of Ashwatha tree. So among all the trees, Vrikshanam, I am Ashwatha. Because Ashwatha, there are other trees which are equally strong, but Ashwatha is something which gives you the idea of eternal. It's not eternal. No matter how much you cut the Ashwatha again from the roots, again a new tree will come. So it gives you an idea of the eternal nature of the Lord. So he takes up every object that we see around us and tries to point out to the greatness that makes that particular species which he has created. He says, I have created all this, but you can find me best. You can find me represented. These are all vibhutis. Only it describes my real vibhuti in a very brief way. I am going to tell you, because your mind is still at a lower level. You like to see vibhutis all around you. Whenever you see these great things, great objects, great rivers, great oceans, when you see them, at least for some time you think of the infinite. Because our human minds we do not have the capacity to grasp the formless or the infinite. We just say, Lord is infinite, is all pervading. But what do we mean? For our day-to-day life, it doesn't mean anything. But at least if we see the Himalayas or see some Ashwatha tree, which we see every day, all the objects that we see every day, we try to see the Lord in the best among the species. So that is why every chapter of the Gita, but as I said, the central theme, so we just have 5 minutes, central theme of the Bhagavad Gita is, as I said, which runs through all the chapters, is this detachment, anasakti. Why is detachment necessary? Because that helps us to separate the confusion of Prakriti with the Purusha. That is the whole goal of Sankhya and also the goal of Yoga. He says, our minds, the vritti sarupyam itaratra. He says, only when we are one with the Purusha, we are really great and we are really infinite. Itaratra means during other times, we are what our minds are. That's the simple explanation. As Buddha said, as you think, so you become. So we are not in reality. We do not understand ourselves. Our self is mixed with so many things. I am an engineer, I am a doctor. It's a partial manifestation of what we are. My identity as an engineer is a very limited identity. The world does not care for that. I may be the biggest doctor or the best doctor, best engineer, but compared to the glory of the Lord, it is nothing. So he says, use these objects and see the greatest objects also are insignificant compared to the Purusha. So this disassociation of Prakriti and Purusha, Viyoga. Actually, yoga has been defined as Viyoga. Yoga means attachment to the Purusha, detachment from the Prakriti, which is making us the slave. It's a slave of Prakriti. Nature always makes us weep. Nature gives us carrots, we run after it and it vanishes. That's the nature of Maya. Prakriti is always like that. It creates, it preserves for some time and finally it destroys. Then you think, why did I run after all these things? It was there, it has vanished. So the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, if you detach yourself from Prakriti herself will help you in this. Through all these yogas, they are also Prakriti's manifestations. Bhakti Yoga, the mind, the emotions. We are using Prakriti to remove the clutches of Prakriti that are making us feel imprisoned in this world. So we are all imprisoned, we want to become free. We can become free only when we detach. That's why Krishna says, do work, do continuous work, fight wars, do whatever you like, that is what he says. And finally in the 18th chapter he says, Sarva Dharman. First is, the whole Gita is trying to show Arjuna what true dharma is, what his duty is, what his swadharma is. So you may think that following swadharma is the goal, but at the end he tells exactly opposite. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami ma shocha. So he tells Arjuna, I told you all these things because you have to pass through all these phases of life. But upholding dharma, fighting a righteous battle, when you have done with all this, you surrender everything, dharma, good and bad, everything you surrender and detach yourself from all this. You may win great victories, but finally, they all went to the Swargarohana. They left everything. All the 5 Pandavas with that faithful dog, Yudhishthira's dog, who was Dharma himself, symbol of Dharma. They go to the Swargarohana. They know we have to leave everything behind. They fought a war, a very miserable, very brutal war, where many of their own people were killed. But ultimately they have to realize that all these things are ephemeral. So that is that detached action. That is the anasakti. Is the main essence, the central theme of Bhagavad Gita. So Sri Krishna shows by his own life. He was attached to almost everybody. Right from childhood he is attached to his friends, his gopis, and then the Yadavas, then the Pandavas, Draupadi. Everybody considered him to be an indispensable person, whatever be the relationship with him. Yeah. So I'll conclude now. I'm very happy that we are running short of time. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna